Welcome back to the show, everybody. On today's episode, I have Alex Presley. Alex is a retired Major League Baseball player who played 10 years in the major leagues. He's a current Sportsnet Pittsburgh analyst for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And on today's episode, Alex Presley. So you played at Ole Miss, correct?
I did. I got the hat after the big win, big Georgia win. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I bet you were pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, I was pumped. Yeah, I played at Ole Miss. Got drafted in 2006, so it seems like that's a long time ago.
But that feels like just yesterday. Dude, that's like I was looking, obviously doing research for you. I'm like, you're not old. And I was like, he's 39 already. I was like, I remember when he was like 24. So,
dude, I did too. Those years of like 24 to 30 feel like they just disappeared.
Dude, that's the phase I'm in. I'm like, I'm 28, and I was like, I'm gonna be 30 in a year and a half. I'm like, where does time go? I'm like, I have 2 kids. I'm like, what is this?
Hang in there. Make sure that you realize what's going on right now, and don't let it just be a blur. That's my advice to you, because you'll be 39, pushing 40 before you blink.
Yeah.
So enjoy these days of your youth. I'm not that old, but I mean, starting to feel it a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
So hang in there. That's all I can tell you.
At what point were you no longer just the best athlete on the field anytime you competed?
Well, I really wasn't ever the best athlete on the field. Even in high school, I was kind of considered not the best athlete. We had a kid, he ended up playing quarterback at Ole Miss. Ironically, we both went there. He was a football player and a baseball player, and he was an All-American in both sports. So I kind of got overshadowed a little bit, even though, like, I mean, I got my accolades, but not like that. So I was never really the best player, honestly, which is kind of crazy to think. Or best athlete, considered the best athlete. I was a soccer player as well. I wasn't the best soccer player, even though I was pretty good. So yeah, man, you just keep grinding away, and I got my credit, but you look at it and you just keep going, and stuff just shakes over time. But yeah, he had the kid, the baseball guy. He didn't play baseball in college, and he was coming in after Eli Manning, so like he was the big recruit after him, so really high expectations, and kind of like had an okay career, but ended up moving positions and playing some tight end and stuff. So, which is nothing to look down upon. I mean, he had a good career. So, yeah, man, I was always kind of sitting in the background just a little bit, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world, I don't think, for me.
How'd you end up at Ole Miss?
Well, this kind of leads or lends to what I was just talking about. So we had a tournament. A bunch of teams from Louisiana. In high school, it was my senior year, actually. I didn't get recruited till my senior year by them. And there's a team that had a catcher that was from South Louisiana, from Lake Charles, that was playing in the tournament. We played against them. Like I said, we had the other kid from my school that was playing baseball, who was still being recruited to try to do both. He ended up not doing both. And then they saw me in that game, and that's kind of how it all began. And the guy that recruited me is I don't know how familiar you are with like college baseball coaches, is Dan McDonald, who's now the head coach at Louisville. He's one of the best coaches in the country. He was our assistant recruiter, and he saw me, and then the communication just kind of picked up, and then they were my best offer to go to the SEC and play. So I went, kind of bet on myself a little bit and took a chance, and I don't regret it for 1 second, looking back now, for sure.
So you're 5'10", you're listed at 190. I'm going to assume in high school you were probably closer to like 165, maybe 175.
Yeah, 175 is probably a little generous. But yeah, I did get up as I got older. I put more weight on. I got to, I think, almost 200 pounds at one point. It was a little heavy for me. But like we didn't really keep up with stuff like that back then as much as you do now. Like, I don't even remember how big I was. I didn't really grow much taller. Um, but I was never a big kid. I was always like right in the middle. Like I wasn't the smallest kid, but I wasn't the biggest kid. Um, but put some pounds on. I was probably in the 180s in college, if I had to say. And then, as you go, as you get into professional baseball, things change. I got to get bigger, stronger, because I'm a little undersized. But yeah, there's always like a little bit of you don't see guys, too many guys under 6 foot in Major League Baseball. So just another thing that had to be overcome with someone's just got to play really hard and stand out a different way, right? Because the measurables aren't going to be the thing that get you super noticed sometimes, but always got to play well if you're undersized.
So what made you different than at being a smaller guy?
I would say I tried to kind of create an identity to some degree of I wanted people to know that, or see me when they played and remember like how hard I ran and how hard I played, to kind of stand out. It's kind of interesting. One of my first years with the Pirates, and I will never forget this, umpire, Laz Diaz. He's been umpire for a while. I think he still is an umpire now. And I remember playing, and I don't remember the specific play, but he was like, I don't know if the inning ended or something. Maybe I was on the bases, and he was like, "Hey, keep playing that way. It stands out. Everybody sees it out here." Because those guys are, some guys shouldn't run balls out every time. Honest, like Albert Pujols shouldn't be busting down the line every time, because we can't get him to get hurt. We need to be hitting. So like, especially at that point in baseball, it was starting to stand out. Kind of like 2011, 12, when things were. You still had the fast guy in baseball, but as the years went on, he kind of phased out a little bit, and now he's starting to come back with the rule changes on the bases and stuff. But yeah, that was a story that stuck with me, and I kind of kept that with me throughout my whole career. Another thing that I did as well, which is, it sounds kind of cheesy, but as I got a little bit older, I started wearing my pants up, because I had somebody, I switched to, because we have multiple pants. Like you'll see guys wear short pants, you'll see them wear long pants. The thing with the Pirates was they would never let you wear long pants in the minor leagues, because you had to get to the big leagues to wear the long pants. So when you got to the big leagues, you want the long pants, because it's been held back from you forever, right? So you want to, like, oh, it's my chance to get the long pants, got to look cool over the shoes. So I got older, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go short pants, because somebody told me, they said, "Man, you look like a ball player." I'm like, all right, I like that. Well, if everybody sees me as a ball player, then the perception of me is going to be like a little more hard nosed. So I wore short pants probably the last like 3 or 4 years of my career, and I think it's crazy as it sounds. I think it kind of helped out a little bit,
Do you ever have
perception wise.
time to appreciate just how much of an outlier you actually are in terms of the rest of the world?
Sometimes I think you get so used to being around the whole major league thing. Like, not that you ever the times that you really realize it is when you're not there. So like, if you get sent down, you get a little it's easy to get comfortable up there, and then you go down, and you're like, man, like, am I ever going to get back there? Like, and you start to realize how special it really was when you're not there, especially. So um it's crazy. The numbers are insane. I don't know where they're at now on the numbers, but it's something along the lines of 22,000 people or 23,000. I don't remember my number. I was like, I should remember my number. Y'all get a number when you get called up. So you're the 19,871st person to play in the big leagues. So you have a number. I don't remember mine. I think it was either 19 something or 20. But there's like 23,000 guys in the history of the world that have ever been able to put on a Major League Baseball jersey and actually play in a game, which is an astonishing number. Obviously, not everyone plays baseball, but we're talking over a course of 100+ years here. So you kind of get really close to it, to the point where it's almost like you're used to it, if that makes sense. Like, it's special, but you don't bat an eye at certain things either, because it's just kind of who you become, and that's like the realm that you're in all the time. But after retiring and not playing, you kind of get to look back and appreciate just how far you came, because like me, there's some guys that get drafted and they're like, well, we know he's going to get to the big leagues. I wasn't one of those guys, and I was a guy that probably most people would said I wasn't going to make it, So, as I've gotten more mature over my years being done, you kind of look back and appreciate the road that you traveled, and the things that you had to get through to get to where you wanted to be. So, from a sheer number standpoint, it's pretty staggering.
I always love to point out for anyone who has ambitions, whether you're in the minor leagues or any sport you're trying to play professionally. I forget the active numbers right now, but there's roughly 3,200 billionaires in the world, and there's significantly less baseball players, MLB baseball players. So at any point in time, anyone who's in the MLB was twice as more likely to be a billionaire. And I don't think people really recognize, and people don't recognize that, because if you were to ask someone, do you think you have a greater chance of being a professional athlete or a billionaire? Most people would say professional athlete, when it's just actively not true. And so when you have someone like yourself, who not only just played Major League Baseball, you were in it for almost a decade, I believe, maybe even longer. So what was the difference between you getting there and the other 5'10" kid who maybe couldn't?
When you look at professional sports, just to kind of piggyback on the first part, it's become, every league has become, maybe not the NFL as much, but basketball, baseball, there's such a world game. Like there's even a bigger player pool now than there used to be, because they're finding every crevice to find talent at this point, and they find it. You can look and see the teams in the playoffs. It's a mix. There's people from everywhere. You have Ohtani, you have the Latin guys. It's just the competition's never been greater in the amount of guys you're competing with. But the difference, so you see these type things in guys being in clubhouses and stuff. You kind of know the guys that are around you. You spend so much time together, you can kind of see, okay, this guy's got it. Like, he's got the mental, he doesn't quit easily. The guys are going to play, that are going to keep playing, that are going to play for you. Things get hard, you can count on them. For me personally, like, I always wanted to be a guy that you knew what you were going to get from me. I didn't want to be like super like up and down. This is the hard part of baseball, is staying like very even, because the margins are so thin between being considered not good and being really good. So it's just it's like a hit a week or something, like as a position player. So like being able to stay even, finding a routine while not being a slave to a routine, if that makes sense, is a huge thing, to where you can get the most consistency out of yourself, as far as where's my mindset, where's my confidence. 0-for-4 yesterday, I'm doing my same routine, my same hitting routine, maybe something small that I need to tweak. 4-for-4, I'm doing the same hitting routine that I need to be successful every single day. Trying to know that you're good, because if you're not confident, you'll get eaten alive, because there's no breaks. I mean, you play a game, you have a bad game, good game, there's going to be a game tomorrow, and you have to be ready, which is a different challenge from a sport like football. Like, you play on a Saturday, Sunday, and then you have that week to prepare. In a lot of ways, it's good for baseball, because you can kind of flush a bad performance quickly. Like, you don't have to sit there and like harp on it all week. Like, what did I do? What could I have done? There's no time to really sulk. And the guys that sulk are the ones that get left behind, because those bad games turn into bad series, and they turn into bad weeks. And it's a thing I think you're kind of born with it, but you have to learn it as well. It's kind of a learned thing to be able to battle through some tough times. The only way to do that is to be in them and fail, and be be weak, or lack of a better word, be weak a couple times and know that that's not going to work. And then I got to do something different. I got to be, more mentally tough or even physically tough. You're going through pains, and it's a long year, 162 games. I mean, you got to take care of yourself. There's going to be days you don't want to play. I know it sounds like, I would love it. First off, I'm not demeaning playing baseball as like, it's not the same as going and working a construction job. It's different. Obviously, it's fun, right? It's a dream, but there are days you show up and you're like, man, I just don't feel like playing today. And you got to find a way to get it done regardless. Like, nobody cares if you don't feel like it. You have to perform. But you see guys, I mean, the guys, it's an endless number of guys that you see that are more talented. You're like, gosh, like if I had his physical ability, I just would only dream of being able to do things physically this guy can do. But you're like, he's not going to make it. You just know he's not going to make it because you got to have discipline on the field, off the field. Some guys get caught up in the life off the field, which affects on the field, and it just kind of, it's like it never, the preparation never stops. Like, even when you leave the field, it doesn't stop. You're like, okay, I got to do this. I got to get to bed. It's all kinds of, I can't go out and drink. Like, it's not going to work. It's not worth it. Some guys just don't care. Some guys are so good that it doesn't matter. So they can do it and get away with it. You're like, man, all right, sure. But like, I'm not that guy. You kind of know yourself a little bit. But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. And if you can't take criticism and deal with failure, you're going to be in some pretty big trouble.
How did you learn to take that criticism?
I kind of feel like I just got a lot of it and just kind of got used to it. Like I said, I wasn't like a massive prospect. I was a top 10 round pick. I was an 8th rounder. So there's some expectation there, but not a huge amount. You're in the top 5, top 3 rounds. You got some money, but you didn't have a ton of money invested in you. So like, the more money you can get invested in you, I mean, the more chances you're going to get, obviously. So the heat was on, and we had a change. We had Dave Littlefield was the GM for the Pirates when I got drafted. And then Neil Huntington came over. That was after my first 2 years of pro ball. He was then hired as Dave Littlefield was fired. I always make the joke that we probably got him fired because our draft class was so bad in the beginning, at least. Sorry, Dave. Which is interesting because I ended up signing with the Tigers later because of Dave Littlefield. So, I got props for Dave in that regard for sure down the line. But yeah, you just kind of like, well, it was a different time as well. It wasn't that long ago. We're talking in the 2010s, early 2010s, even midway to 2010. The social media is just, it's different. It's just a different world in such a fast amount of time. So it was easy to block out noise. I'm not a huge social media guy anyway. So like, I could have, survived this time right now with social media, but there's just so much. Like, I guess I just kind of like didn't want to. I just block out everything I could because it was just a distraction. But I mean, it's you just have to have a lot of self-belief. People tell you that you need to get better. Maybe you need to take it as a positive and take it as a constructive, and say, like, if these are my deficiencies, I need to work on them, instead, as opposed to pushing back and just kind of denying that those are reality, because that's the only way to improve upon yourself. I mean, people from the outside can see you different than you see yourself, for sure, because you see yourself, I'm a confident guy, I'm good, I can hit, but why am I getting sent down? It's so funny. Like, I look back now and situations, man, I didn't see what was happening when I was in it, and I look back and I'm like, okay, like, I kind of see what was done there. Moves that I may have been like mad about or upset, something happened. I'm okay, like, look at my numbers. I mean, so that if I was a GM, I might have done the same thing. So it's just hindsight. You know what they say about that. But I think really taking the criticism and using it as either like a fuel, or literally I need to work on this and really focus on those things to improve. And I try to do that as much as possible, even when, sometimes it wasn't what you wanted to hear. A lot of times as when you're in a profession like baseball or sports, like at some point you appreciate the criticism because you're like, I need to know what's going on. Tell me that I'm not good enough or whatever, so I can address it instead of not knowing,
What did you consciously do to remain mentally prepared, knowing that you may only get one opportunity to get to the big league since you weren't an early round draft pick? I know there's external expectations, but we all have internal expectations. We all want to make it to the NFL or the MLB or the NBA. And the lower we come on that totem pole, the less opportunities we internally know we have. So what did you do to keep yourself ready for those moments?
So I think it was in 2011. I had gotten called up initially in 2010, just for September. Got a couple, I think like 24 at bats or something. Just it didn't really matter how I did. I knew I got a few hits. I was fine. And then I started on AAA in 2011, and I was really tearing it up, like really killing it. And then there became like this buzz to get me up, because in 2010 I was a player of the year, minor league player of the year. And about midway through 11, I came up. So like, this is my big chance. I know I'm going to get to actually play a little bit. It was one of those things where I was trying to see if I belonged, I guess, in a way. I knew what I was doing was working, but then there's always that little seed of doubt once you go up to the next level. Like, is this going to work here? So I really just tried to stick with what I was good at as much as possible, which that's where I got my confidence from, was through my like style of play and my approach at the plate, which I knew was very consistent. So I kind of leaned on those things and I shouldn't say worried. I focused on more of the process of what I was doing, as opposed to what if I don't get a hit? What if I go 0 for 4? It's going to be the last game I get to play. Am I going to go back down? So I really focused on what I was doing and what I was good at, and what the things that I like physically needed to do and mentally approach wise, especially like, you break it into like the macro of, I have confidence that I can play. And you go to the micro, we're like inside an at bat, and I just swung at a bad pitch. I got to get back to my zone, my approach, where I wanted to be. So really just exploiting that as much as possible. And I played really well. The problem the times when I had a problem wasn't necessarily like when my back felt like it was against the wall. It was when I got too comfortable. That's kind of when I had my issues, more than anything. I kind of, you do well, and you kind of like, you start to pat yourself on the back a little bit too much, and you start to think, all right, I got this. I'm good. Like, I'm not that you don't stop working harder. I can't really describe it. You kind of just think that you've got it down, and you don't. And when I found for myself, when I got in that point, that's kind of when stuff would start to go a little sideways for me. You kind of lose that little bit of like underdog feeling. You're like, okay, I'm here. I'm supposed to be here. I'm good. You lose maybe a little bit of an edge at some point, which I always had to have an edge and be a little edgy type player. And when I lost that, I kind of could tell and could kind of feel it, work its way into the way I played.
How would you coach yourself now to keep that edge on all the time?
Let's see. How would I coach myself? There's some guys need to be coddled, and some guys you can get on. I would probably be somewhere in the middle. Like I honestly don't feel like I was told I was good that often. So like, I didn't need heapings of praise. And somebody should be like, can somebody just tell me like I'm pretty good? Like, can the like upper management tell me I'm good one time? Like, and like, which they did, but not like, it's not a reality in professional baseball that you like speak in the chairman. It's like, hey man, keep it going, good job. usually when you're talking to the GM or something like that, it's usually something's going on that's not what you want. But I'd probably be a little harder on myself just because I'd have to stay on and remind myself of like how difficult everything was for me to get there, and maybe like be like, hey man, show a little more gratitude about where you're at and appreciate where we're at now, as opposed to worrying about what could happen should things go sideways. Like, let's just stay here, stay where you're at right now. Quit worrying about everybody. Don't worry about everybody else. And you just stay focused on what you're doing. Don't worry about potential roster moves. Don't worry about why is this guy playing? Is this guy going to do well? And it's funny because I really started to take off more so. Like, so you have in any level of sports, you have like the guys you're competing with, right? And you're always paying attention to the guys you're competing with. And it's really hard to wish good things on those guys, if we're being honest. And one of the things that helped me out the most was when I started to be like, I want to help the people I'm competing with, and I want to cheer for them. I want them to do well. That was huge for me, because you didn't spend that energy, hoping that they would get out so you get another chance. It just completely turned it turned everything upside down of what you would think. So that was big for me to just be like, be genuinely happy for the people that were taking my spot or could take my spot. And that wasn't even for them. That was for me, It's kind of crazy. It's kind of counterintuitive to do that, but that was a big step for me. And if I was a coach, I said I would go midway. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably be all over me the entire time, honestly, because I think I could take it.
So as an athlete, I was similar in the sense where anytime my back was against the wall or I had something to prove, it was by far and away the best I had ever played, whether it was coming off an injury, whether it was the first time in a new role and it's like, hey, I have to prove myself, or it's a game against someone who's really talented or supposed to be a top recruit, whatever. Those were the games I always played the best. Similar to what you just said, though, when I was solidified, when I had that starting spot, when I was supposed to be the guy, that's actually when I had most of my struggle. And it wasn't that I wasn't working as hard as maybe I was a little bit less focused or less attention to detail or, going through the motions a little bit, even though I am working hard.
Sure.
And it's funny, that gratitude piece that you said, and, looking at the people you're competing with, and instead of wishing bad luck against them, but being there to help them, being there to coach them and root for them, because it makes you better too. It enhances your knowledge of the game. It enhances your understanding of human behavior and how we tick and how we learn. And in general, when you are happy or in a state of gratitude, you're actually able to compete at a better level because your base state of happiness is higher. If you're pissed off all the time and jealous all the time, it's harder to perform because you're performing out of a state that's not cohesive with high performance. And so putting yourself in that state of mind where it's, hey, I can compete out of gratitude. I'm going to help those around me just because even if it is selfish intentions, it makes me feel better if I'm helping those around me. And the more I help people around me, it's also going to increase competition. And in my opinion, competition elevates performance.
Yeah. And you described it perfectly. Like the of being, when you have a role solidified, it doesn't change your work. It's not like I get lazy. But it's almost like you don't have that fight or flight's gone. Like when you get in that situation where you're like, this is it. Like I gotta perform now. Everything gets amped up, elevated. Your level of focus is elevated. As opposed to, you know what? I'm starting today. I'm going to play today. If I do well, cool. I'm going to play tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Like, I'll figure it out. We'll just, it's a long season. I'm just going to, if I have a bad couple games, not a big deal. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to have all this time to figure it out. When in reality, you don't have a lot of time to figure anything out. It's all, it's a trick. And the whole thing's a trick. You don't have time to figure it out. The guys you watch on TV, you watch the Freddie Freeman's and those guys, like those guys are so good that they've been afforded these opportunities and they perform for very long periods of time without massive lulls of performance, which is why they play. And you see those guys all the time, and everybody thinks that's the norm, when in fact the window to play and be good is very, very short. And the ability to do it for a long period of time is very difficult, especially if you're not one of the top. You have to have something's got to elevate you for a long period of time. And those guys have both. They have the mental, they have the elite physical ability. But if you're like a guy that, okay, everybody in the big leagues has some elite physical ability, but when we're talking relatively speaking here, like there's guys living in different worlds, right? Even at the big leagues, you have like Mike Trout type and Aaron Judge, and you got like the guy that is the best player you've ever seen, but he's right there on the edge a lot, and he's trying to battle. So like complacency is not something that that helps anyone, much less the guy that's right on the edge. And I found that out a couple times because you battle. The only thing I ever wanted was like, I want to be someplace for a long period or for a decent period of time. I only had a couple times where I went to spring training where I knew I was going to make the team. And once you make the team, you're like, you think, oh, good, I made it. I can take a breath. It's like, you really can't. You can't take a breath because the second that you show some type of deficiency in your game over a period of time, they're going to look for an upgrade unless you are one of the top guys. That's just the reality of it.
When you look at the most innovative time periods in U.S. history, they were all in world wars or Great Depressions, because it was, if we don't innovate now and we don't do it fast, we can't feed our families. Our society is going to collapse. If you look at the greatest companies, they always become the best because their foot is on the gas pedal for years and years and years. And when you're in those moments and your back's against the wall or the society is on the brink of collapse, you're not thinking about anything other than, I need to make this work, I need to build, I need to get it done. In the hope, in the future, that there's some payoff and you can take your foot off the gas pedal. And when you see, and that's why society's cyclical, that's why businesses get really successful and then fail, because the very thing that makes them great ends up being, when they take their foot off the gas pedal, that's why they fail, because they're no longer doing those things. And it's the same thing with athletics. It's we grind and we hustle and we do it for the hopes of playing time, for making it. And then once we make it, that's no longer a goal. It's the hedonic treadmill. It's boom. Now what's next? And it's really hard if you don't have that mental and physical stamina, you're not actively working on it. It's so easy to drop off. And that's why I'm so fascinated by guys who, like you said, the Freddie Freemans of the world, who just do it for years and years and are able to sustain that play and sustain that effort and that motor and that attention to detail.
And yeah, and he has that. The thing is, like, I guess the big question is, how do you stay that way more often, even when you're not in situations where your back's against the wall? I mean, I guess, why do you play? What's your, everybody likes to say, what's your why, right? What's your why? You got to have something, there's got to be something more to what you do, because it's just getting there and being there is a great thing. And the highest level of anything is amazing. The highest level of athletics, you're on the biggest stage. You're playing in front of the most amount of people. People are watching on TV. You're putting the jersey on that very few have had the chance to do. You're kind of like, I made it. Like those guys, a lot of those guys, their goal wasn't to make it. They knew they were going to make it. It was a matter of my goal is to be really good for a really long period of time. And I think, for me, my goal was to make it. I never really thought past that point until I got there. But you almost have to, like, your goalpost needs to move further down the line. Like, if my goal is to be an all-star and I strive to be an all-star every day and I fall short, what am I, an everyday player? Maybe, I come off the bench a little bit, as opposed to my goal is to stay here. If I fall short, I'm getting sent down. So that you could get sent down with the goal of being an all-star. That's not what I'm saying, but it gets you working towards something greater at all times to keep that awareness up. And that heightened awareness, or just being there's an afterthought at a certain point, because yeah, I expect to be here because I'm trying to be an all-star caliber player. So me being here that's a foregone conclusion. So it's just kind of how you shape stuff, what you value. Like, certain things, like, people say, oh, well, the money, like, is that what you want? And I guess, if that's somebody's reason to play, that's somebody's reason to play. It wasn't my reason to play. It's great. It's a great part of it, obviously, but there's got to be some greater meaning to what you're doing, to keep you going in those times where it feels like you can relax or, feel comfortable, because there's somebody coming for you. There's somebody behind you coming for you just the way you were coming on your way up, that wants your spot. So, there's got to be something that has a long lasting appeal over the course of a career, as opposed to, I just want to get here. And it's different for a lot of people. It could be family, it could be anything. But you got to try to tap into that. And that's true with anything, I think, just to stay motivated, because there's days where you don't want to do anything. For everybody. I mean, you're lying if you say you want to, oh, I'm grinding every day. It's like, no, you're not. You can't be. Maybe Elon Musk is. I don't know. He seems like he has no time. But he's just shooting rockets and catching them. So I don't know. I mean, he doesn't have a whole lot of downtime. But yeah, you kind of have to get I don't want to say fabricate some stuff, but sometimes you got to trick yourself into saying, hey, I got to go. We got to get this done today. Because that opportunity, like you said, like the downturns or whatever, they're not always going to be there for you to feed off of, to survive.
And it's not sustainable to run that way either. And there's a reason why, once a big company gets to that point and they end up failing, because you can't run all the time like your life depends on it, because you will burn out. So it's learning to incorporate that recovery piece and finding that deeper reasoning, like you said, and really changing the perspective. Because if you're constantly in that state of my back's against the wall, even if that's when you perform your best, you can't operate for a long period of time like that. You may win in the short run, you may win for a couple of years, but over the long run, it's going to crash. So it's learning that rephrase of how to put into perspective what I want to achieve. So then it's no longer my back's always against the wall, but it's whatever the case is. I want to extend my career. I want to achieve this. This is what I love doing. And even if it is exhaustive work, enhancing that love or gratitude piece for it. And those are becoming a little bit buzzwords. But until we learn a better way to say those things, whatever we intrinsically are drawn to, that's what we need to be working towards, so it doesn't feel like as much work. And one of my good friends he's a wonder kid. He'll be a GM in the NFL before he's 35. And the amount of hours that he works is insane, like 4 a.m. to like 9 p.m. But he loves it. So it's like, what part of us are we intrinsically drawn to that doesn't feel like an immense amount of work? Double down in those areas and enhance that over a long stretch of time.
Sure. And another thing, I mean, he gets up early. You're starting at 4. Other people aren't starting at 4. What are you doing that other people aren't doing? What percentage of people are working that early in the morning, or even getting up that early in the morning? It's a very small amount. I mean, you got to do things that others aren't willing to do constantly. Like, it has to be, I said before earlier, I mean, everything you do that's a choice is a choice of, is this going to help me progress, or is it going to make me regress? I mean, in the off season, another thing, like you got to find a spouse that's going to be all in on this, or you're in trouble. So like we would have off season and off season workouts. I'm like, well, we got to go on vacation. Well, yeah, sure, we can go on vacation, but like we got to do this at a time where I'm not doing workouts, and we can't be gone for too long. I got to try to do some workouts while I'm there. I got to get back. I mean, like it's all encompassing. Like the off season was so much fun because you got to work out and like with we had like a pack. We had a workout pack group. Because I was down in Sarasota, Bradenton area. We lived down there for 5 years, so that's where I was the second half of my career. And we had a good group of guys on there, and like the pack mentality is a real thing in the weight room. And I need you to be, are you coming? You're not there. Somebody's texting you like, hey, you coming this morning? You're like, yeah, I'm coming. Because you just texted me. Okay. I wanted to sleep in, but I'm not going to. But everything you do matters toward that goal if you're going to be an elite person at whatever it is. Like you look at those people, they work harder than anybody. It doesn't just happen. You're like, well, look how great he is. Like it's like it's like the illustration or like of the guy that's standing on the podium, and then like underneath him, it's like all the hours you don't see that led to all you see is the podium for these guys. And it's hard because you have to make a lot of sacrifices. Could be anything, could be trips. You sacrifice family, especially in baseball, being off for the season. You miss a ton of stuff. You're not going anywhere. It's like you're in containment for 7 months. Like unless there's a death in the family, you're not go or a child's being born that's yours, you're probably not going anywhere. So like continual sacrifice, doing things that others aren't willing to do on a consistent basis. And you look at like Tom Brady, the guys like that, and it's like literally everything he does was to be the greatest quarterback that's ever lived. Like every piece of food he put in his mouth, every, here's another good example. This is a crazy example. So I've gotten into running, which is hard. Okay. It sucks. Distance running is hard. So have respect for those people that are running the marathons at like under 5 minute mile for 26.2 miles is absolutely, I can't even fathom it. So there's a guy, watched a documentary. His name's Jakob Ingebrigtsen. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a Norwegian runner. He's a Olympic gold medalist in 1500 and the 5000. I think he swapped. He won this past Olympics and won like the other Olympics. So like, and it would go through him and like his brothers. They're like a running institution in Norway. Like their dad brought them up running from day one. And Jakob is the youngest. He's the best. The guy does literally everything to be the best on the track. It's funny. They showed him, he was in a hotel room the day before, a meet. I don't remember where he was specifically. He was on his computer and they showed him like laid back on the bed and he had his hand on the mouth and he's like doing stuff. He's like, this way I don't have to move my arm because he doesn't want to use any energy. He's like, I don't climb stairs. I will not go upstairs in my house. He makes his wife go do it. So like, this is the kind of like, okay, that's extreme. It sounds a little extreme, but like, he's the best.
That's what you're competing against.
He does everything. Yeah. If the guy that I'm running against is going upstairs in his house, then whenever we're sprinting at the end and we're neck and neck, I expect to have just that much difference to beat him. It's wild. I mean, the best guys the best guys do things that 99.9% of the people aren't willing to do. And he looks insane, but he's winning. And that's what he wants to do. And that's what he made a choice to be that, to take it that far, to knowing that the margins are like so small that if I do this, if it gives me like the smallest advantage, that it's worth it.
That's the cost of winning, and people need to determine whether or not they're willing to pay that cost. And if you're not, you have to be okay not getting to those levels. One thing that you did mention that is really important is that relationship piece and your environment and people pushing you. I got to imagine that's one of the hardest parts of getting traded mid-season to different organizations with different guys who may not be the type of guys that you need that enhance yourself. How do you deal with that when you get traded?
Yeah, I was pretty early on, pretty fortunate. We had a good group that came up, so we played a lot together. It was like there was a lot of us that made it to the big leagues. So we had like, Josh Harrison, Jordy Mercer, uh, Pedro Alvarez, the whole group. I mean, we had Neil Walker and Kutch. They were like a year ahead of me. And then you had like Tony Watson in the pen, Jared Hughes, who everybody knows the Jared Hughes run. Great guy. So we came up together, like playing and winning, and I felt like some of the bonds that were created were the strongest bonds that I've had in pro ball were the guys that I was in the junk with early on. Were long bus trips overnight. I mean, the minor league is not glamorous. It's gotten better. It's gotten way better. The conditions have gotten way better here recently with some changes, but not glamorous. You're rooming in the hotel room with a guy that you wanted to be that you could be around for a long period of time. That I don't think it was a coincidence that a lot of guys from our group made it. But yeah, you get traded, and then your whole environment is just like is turned upside down. Who are going to be my guys or guy on this team? One of the good things was my first trade. Well, I guess my only trade technically was in 2013. I got traded to the Twins at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, and I showed up in Arlington, Texas on a Sunday. So I found out I got traded on Saturday afternoon, and then it was like a noon game on Sunday in Arlington. And so I flew, to get out of my apartment, do all this pack up, short notice. That's just kind of the way it works. Like they want you there. And flew that next morning. And my girlfriend at the time, now wife, so I can mention her, she was crucial in all this, like in the background, helping me get everything done, getting ready to go. Like, let's not forget, like, I want to give her and some other like wives and significant other props here because it's a hard thing to do. So on Sunday, I flew early. I'm exhausted. I had to go into this clubhouse of guys that I don't really know, but thankfully baseball is a pretty like small community, so you can usually cherry pick a couple guys. You're like, I know that he knows him or he played with him. He went to college with him. So like you have something you can be like, hey man, I know so and so. It's like, oh yeah, cool. But the other weird thing is I just gotten traded. I don't know if you remember in 13, that was when Justin Morneau came from the Twins. So I was in that trade. So like I'm coming over for a guy that has been one of their best players in the last decade. So it was a pretty big loss. It was a pretty big deal that he was gone. So I came in, and I will say this, like all the talking introducing yourself in the clubhouse is all cool and fine. And like, maybe we have something in common, but the time the easiest time that the bonding happened was on the field. Like once you go in there and you start to contribute to the team, everything just starts to roll. Like, okay, all right, we're in this. Let's do this. We're in this together. You do something good in the game. Nice job. Everybody's congratulating you, and likewise. So like it really breaks down whatever breaks the ice. Whatever's weird about going meeting new people. Just getting on the field is like the easiest thing to do for me for that, because I'm not the guy that's like wants to go up to everybody and introduce myself, and not because I don't want to know people. It's just because that's just kind of like how I am. That's my personality. So going into a new environment for me is difficult. Like, it stresses me out. Some people are like, I want to meet new people. I'm like, yeah, like I want to meet new people, but like this kind of sucks. Like, I can't, like, what do I talk about? Like, oh, it's hot out there today. Like, I don't know, like and it was hot. It was like 100 degrees in Texas, at the old stadium. But yeah, I found that there's no greater way to get to know teammates than getting on the field and like getting your hands dirty, contributing together, and winning some games.
What are you doing now that keeps you challenging or that challenges you? How do you continue to stay competitive?
Well, that's a hard thing. It's been difficult. Like, if I told you it was easy, I'd be lying. I thought it would be easy. It's not near as easy as I anticipated. Quite the opposite. In fact, the hardest part has been trying to find something. I was under the illusion that I was going to be able to replace it, and I haven't been able to do that, and I don't think I will be able to do that. Getting back into the sport has been key for me. Whether how small or how big, it didn't even matter. I remember a couple years ago, it was kind of like in like a weird place, limbo. I feel like I've been in limbo for a little bit. Like, I'm starting to kind of really get my feet on what I'm trying to do. And had a buddy, a guy here. I'm in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. Had a son in high school who plays baseball. I'm like, hey, like, maybe I'll go hit with Josh. If Josh want to go hit, 'cause I want to, like, it was like a bad breakup in the beginning. Like, I don't want anything. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to talk about it. Which was me kind of being a baby when it comes down to it. Like, just
I went through the same phase. I think I don't want to cut you off, but I went through the exact same phase when I was with, again, my stint was not 10 years in the MLB. I was in an NFL locker room for 4 days and then got cut. But I was the same way. I didn't want to watch football. I didn't want to participate in fantasy football. I didn't want anything to do with football. I wanted to be completely away from it. Because every time I saw it, it just brought back that pain. And even today, if I go to an NFL game or a college game, I always end up texting. He's my buddy who's going to be a GM. I'll text him. I'll be like, it is so hard for me to go to games in the environment because it brings back that feeling and emotion. So I know exactly what you're talking.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you played 10 years in the NFL or you were in the locker room for 4 days. It doesn't, like, the feeling of it being over is not any different. Like, it's just as painful. Because either way, you put everything you had into it one way or the other. It's like, you're trying to avoid those things that bring that pain back. Like you said, it's funny because I think I was done in 2019, and we were still in Florida at this point. So then we had our daughter in 2020. We moved up to Pittsburgh because my wife's from Uniontown to be closer to family. We had no family in Florida. 2020, a great year to move, by the way. It was really good.
I got married in 2020, so hey, I'm with you.
But then just being here was kind of weird at first for me. We didn't go to a game, Pirates game. I don't think the first year we lived here. My wife's like, hey, you want to go to the game? I'm like, no, good. And then I ended up going, and then you're like, everything just rushes back. You're like, oh, it feels like I'm going to the field again, and it feels like you start to hear the PA. PA is the same guy. All the little stuff. It brings back those feelings of they're good memories, but at the same time it's painful because you don't have that anymore. But yeah, one of the big things for me was I got to get on Sportsnet this year a little bit, which is cool. Being involved with the team in some way has really helped me. Looking to expound on that this coming season, so we'll see how that goes. But that's really made me look at it differently, where I was kind of felt like it was something that I was no longer a part of. That was kind of painful. Now I feel like we're a part of it. So I've kind of like turned it around for me a little bit. But yeah, it's just like a really bad breakup. I don't know. It's like almost like you're mourning. It's like mourning a death, almost in a way.
Again, you're taking the words out of my mouth. I say the only way I can describe it is like a piece of you dies. When your sport's taken from you and you care about it, right? And you put everything into it. For some people, they don't have the issue, right? Some people are kind of ready to walk away, but for a lot of athletes, it feels like a piece of you dies that day.
Yeah, and you feel like there's more. There is still more to do. There was
Yeah.
more. There was more that needed to be done that you just didn't get the chance to do. And I mean, the guys that walk away, sorry, on their own terms, very content with their career. I mean, that's very, very, very small. Most people walk away.
Infinitesimally small number.
Yeah, and if you just, if you're not really in it, you don't realize. You kind of just in passing watch sports. You're like, oh well, he's retiring. It's like, yeah. Tom Brady's retiring. Yeah, he's 49 years old. He's retiring. And he's won 6 Super Bowls or something. He can walk away. Yeah, well, I don't know about him. His drive is insane, but like
I was gonna say he probably still even struggles walking away.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a struggle walking away, but you can look and be like, I couldn't have done. Like, what more could I have done? And I think like knowing that there's more, at least in your mind, like meat on the bone, it makes it a little tougher, I think. Because you can't, once you're out, you're out. It's hard to come back. Like, we can't all be like Jordan. Like, you can't come wear 45 and come back and be like, hey, sweet, you're good enough to leave and come back. That doesn't happen. But yeah, it's a very tough thing, especially because you're kind of forced to be like, okay, I'm doing a career change as well. Like, there's a career change is happening. You're starting from scratch. For me, I was 33, and you're like, what do I do? Do I want to go sit at a desk, or
It's an overhaul of your identity. It's completely changing who you are and what you've done for the entirety of your life and what you've been good at.
And I think when shift the focus just a little bit, if that is your identity, that's a mistake in some way. I'm not going to get, I don't know if you want to get like religious, but we can, but like, my identity shifted towards the end of my career. Like, it didn't mean that it didn't hurt any less. It still hurt, but like, I mean, my identity was in Christ at that point. At the end, towards the end, I started to realize that, who I was didn't depend on, or my worth didn't depend on if I was playing in the major leagues or not, even though I really wanted to and desired to. And it still sucked when I stopped playing, and I still dealt with all those issues and still kind of am, honestly. But that was a key thing for me to put my identity, because once that dies, if that's you, that's all you are, then if that dies, then you're left with nothing. Like, there's nothing left. So knowing that there's more there, to you, and your value comes from somewhere else, I think, has been a big thing to help me get through all of it.
And for me, I was always religious. I was born and raised Catholic. I got really into my faith in high school when I met my girlfriend, who is now my wife. We ended up, being high school sweethearts. But I want to say I always went to church, and I tried to live out the virtues. I never wanted to be the person who went to church on Sundays but sucked, Monday through Saturday, right? That wasn't the person I wanted to be. So I always did my best to be a good person, but without actually consciously acknowledging that I was more than just a football player, even though I had so much going for me. Multiple degrees. I had my wife. I had my faith. I had a great family. It was without actively incorporating those things into who I was. When I got cut, like I said, it felt like I was left with nothing. And so I had to learn how to engineer my identity, incorporate those things, and really actively try and be someone that I was proud of and who I wanted to be, and how to use sports to do that. And I do think one thing where I've changed is because when I started working on identity, I wanted athletics to be no part of my identity because I knew that that's what hurt me so much. But as I've grown and gotten older, I'm always going to be an athlete. I don't care how old I am. I don't care how injured I am. The athlete's always going to be in me, and using those characteristics to be something that's proud of me, using that competitive energy. And it's learning how to do that in a healthy manner for yourself.
It's yeah, you're trying to replace that in any way you can. I've tried to do that in running, which has helped. I mean, it's hard. It's been a challenge for me, but I'm like beating myself consistently. Like I'm like, okay, like I have a goal, I have something to work toward, like, and obviously I get to stay healthy in the process, right? So like I always say, like, if I was just running to run or to like burn a calorie, running would be way harder. Now I see it as like, okay, I'm training to do this, I want to hit this time. So like the healthy, I guess you would call it, mind and body in theory is a byproduct of what I'm doing. But yeah, man, you're 100% right. The identity is taken from you, but it still is a part of you. It's not going to leave you. Like, it's not like you feel like part of you was born to do that. That you were put here to do those things, and physically, because everything's a platform for whatever you want it to be, right? So like, I think God put me on earth to play baseball as a platform, then he probably chose for me to be done too and find a new platform or use that old platform in a way in which to talk about him, or am I going to do it in a different way? I don't know, so it's been really helpful for me to lean on that, and still grinding today, still trying to do it. Not always easy. It's not like like, oh, we'll just do this and everything will be fine. Like, it's a constant struggle at all times. You're working through it, but it's good, man. It's been a wild ride. It's been a wild, quote unquote, like, recovery for me. So I'm still in recovery. But yeah, it's definitely, I've learned a lot in the process, which I think is very important. Like, matured and been able to see that there are no shortcuts in anything. Nothing. Doesn't matter what you're doing. I see, like, the best people in everything that do things. There's no shortcuts. You think there's shortcuts, but there's not. It's just not a reality.
Alex Presley, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it, man. If people want to reach out to you, they want to ask you questions, or if you have anything to promote, please take the next time to tell us.
Yeah. I'm not a huge social media guy, so let's just leave it at that. But you can, on Instagram, I'm alex.presley, pretty simple. You can reach out to me if you have anything to say or comments, questions, and I'm not going to promise that I will immediately respond to you because I'm not all over it. But yeah, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to talk, man. I enjoyed it. Just so many people can relate to the struggle of battling through things, and it doesn't have to be sports. It's just sports are just a microcosm of life, man. So appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for coming on, man. It means a lot, and hopefully some people reach out to you. I know people are going to take a lot from the episode, but listeners, thank you again for tuning in. Make sure to tune in next week. Check us out at athleticfortitude.com. Download the podcast. Go subscribe on YouTube. Remember, 5 stars only, baby. Thank you again, Alex.